Good morning, students. Today we are going to see a new topic from the paper 2, unit 4, and this is the last topic, and rest of the topics is already discussed in the last lecture. So today's topic is the probability. So right from the definition, what is the probability? Probability means chance of occurrence. Always remember that it is nothing but a chance of occurrence of certain event when expressed quantitatively. So in simple way we can say that probability is nothing but the chance of occurrence of certain event, and that can be represented quantitatively. So probability is a concept which measures the degree of uncertainty or uncertainly. So the uncertainty is numerical expression and it can be expressed as probability. So chance of occurrence when expressed in case of probability or uncertainty is can be numerically expressed when uncertainty can be numerically expressed, and it is said to be the probability. So there are certain terms which you must know, and after that we are going to solve the problems of the probability. So certain terms or important terms which we should know is, first one is the random experiment or trial. Or what do you mean by a trial? So any natural phenomena yielding some result will be termed as the random experiment. So what do you mean by random experiment or trial? Trial is any natural phenomena, कोई भी ऐसा प्रकार का phenomena yielding some result, वो phenomena होने के बाद एक result show करता है, and this is termed as random experiment. The meaning of unpredictability of an outcome. So the term random मतलब क्या होता है? It attach the meaning of unpredictability. जो हम predict नहीं कर सकते हैं उससे क्या करना है, उसका नाम हम अटैच करते हैं. तो द थिंग्स विच कैन नॉट बी अनप्रिडिक्टेबल एंड इट कैन बी एन आउटकम. सो आफ्टर टॉसिंग अ कॉइन वी कैन नॉट से दैट कि इट विल बी हेड और ए tail. So this is unpredictability of an outcome. What is outcome? It may be either the head or the tail. So it is also random experiment or trial. It is also called as a trial. So random experiment is also called as a trial, and it is nothing but the random attaches the meaning of unpredictability of an outcome. So you know what is the random experiment or a trial. Trial is any phenomena which is yielding some result will be termed as random experiment or a trial. Okay. So this was regarding the random experiment or trial. What do you mean by trial? Next is event. The result of in possible forms are said to be event of that experiment. So if you toss a coin and if it comes head or a tail, so this is head is said to be the possible forms of, this is nothing but the possible outcome. So the result of an experiment may be head in all possible forms is said to be an event. So if we toss it, we can't assess whether it will be head or tail. So event will be the head and the tail. Let us toss a coin. So if you toss a coin, the result is either head or tail. So it is sub collection of numbers of sample points. So head and tail both are said to be the events. So one can describe the event as the possible outcome of a trial denoted by a capital letter ABC. So what all possible outcome of a trial comes, that is said to be event. So if you toss a coin, the head and tail are both are the event. Understood? So we can say that whenever we are tossing a coin, we are not able to assess whether it will be head or a tail. So the event may be the all possible outcomes. So the possible outcomes may be both head and the tail. Now coming up to the null event. What do you mean by null event? We have seen just now what do you mean by event. Now coming up to the null event. So an event having no sample point is called the null event. So having no sample point, they are said to be the null event, and it is denoted by the psi, this symbol. Next coming up to the simple events. So simple event, the event which is consisting of only one sample point of a sample space is called the simple event. So it is consisting of only one sample point of the sample space. Now coming up to the compound events. From the name itself we suggest when an event is decomposable into number of simple events, then it is called as the compound events. So compound events, these can be the events which can be broken into number of simple events. छोटे छोटे simple events में हम क्या कर सकते हैं, उसे डिकम्पोज से ब्रेक कर सकते हैं, that is called as the compound event. Next is the sample space. So sample space, a set of all possible outcomes from an experiment, is called the sample space. So all possible outcomes, जितना भी outcomes हो सकते हैं. So if you toss a coin, head and tail both are the you can say the sample space is both head and the tail. So this is all possible outcomes from an experiment, and it is called the sample space. So if we toss a coin, the result is either head or a tail. Mark the points 0 and 1. Thus we get two different points, that is 0 and 1. So the result will be 0 and 1. So if 0 is the head, 1 is the tail. So the sample point is in between 0 and 1. And for the given experiment, there are different possible outcomes and hence different sample point. So if in an experiment, consider if we toss the coin 3 times, so the possible outcomes may be different. And if we toss the coin for 2 times, so possible outcomes will be the different. So for the given experiment, the different possible outcomes and hence different sample point. Different outcomes भी हो सकते हैं और different sample point भी हो सकते हैं. Example for tossing a coin, the sample space is H and T, head and tail. Next is a discrete sample space. So a sample space whose elements are finite or infinite but countable, it is called the discrete sample space. So if we count, if are able to count or not able to count, but these are countable, infinite, मतलब more than one if it is there, and if it is countable, that but it should be countable. So whose element which are finite or infinite but countable, they are said to be the discrete sample space. So if we toss a coin, as many as we require for tuning up one, मतलब हम एक कॉइन को टॉस करते हैं जब तक कि वो हेड आए नहीं, then the sequence point will be S1 is equal to 1, S2 is equal to 0, 1, S3 is equal to 0, 1, 0, 1, S4 will be equals to 0, 0, 0, 1, etc. So if we toss a coin, as many as we require, हमें जितना हेड चाहिए for turning up one head, then the sequence point will be, so consider if we toss it once only, then we'll get it 1 head, then we can say that S is equal to 1. But the second experiment, if we are going to toss it and we didn't get the head first, we get the tail, and later on after tossing it second time we'll get the head. So this may be the sequence 0 1. Next time, so if we want 2 times head, then the sequence will be this way, or you may get 3 times the head, or the second times again, or first times will be the head. So these are the discrete sample space. Next, coming up to the continuous sample space. So in the continuous sample space, a sample whose space elements are finite, uncountable, or assume all the values on a real line on an interval of R is the continuous sample space. So sample point, here the sample point build up the continuous and the sample space is said to be the continuous. So sample point, it builds up the continuous and the sample space is said to be the continuous. But always remember that as a sample space whose elements are finite, इनके elements जो होते हैं, it may be infinite and uncountable, इसे हम count नहीं कर पाते हैं. But in case of discrete samples, these elements whose elements are finite and or infinite but countable. Here we can say that in case of discrete samples, the elements are countable, but in case of continuous sample space, here the elements are uncountable. Next, coming up to the events, type of events. So the events, it may be exhaustive मतलब समाप्त होने वाला. So total number of all possible outcomes in this exhaustive events, so it occurs. So it is a total number of all possible outcomes of an experiment. What is exhaustive events? Total number of all possible outcomes of an experiment. And in an experiment E, consider an experiment E with a set of events, consider A1, A2, A3, AN, says up to AN. We say events are exhaustive if at least one of the event is sure to occur at every performance. So after performing experiment, if we are sure about one event to be occur, then we can say that it is an exhaustive type of event. Example for throwing a dice. So when we throw a dice, then one of the 6 faces may turn up. ठीक है ना, जब हम डाइस को थ्रो करते हैं तो हमें पता है उनमें से कोई भी एक आएगा, वो कंफर्म नहीं बोल सकते हैं, बट आउट ऑफ 6, सो इन केस ऑफ डाइस वी कैन फाइंड आउट दी हाउ मेनी फेसेस, the 6 faces. So one will be upside will be 1 and the just below to the 1 we can find out the 6. So in this side if we can find out 2, so here side we can find out the 3. Similarly here if you can find out the 4, here we can find out the 5, and if this is first and this will be the 6. So if we throw the dice, then one of the 6 faces may turn up. जब हम डाइस को हम थ्रो करते हैं, then we can say that only one of the face will show off or turn up. Therefore, there are 6 possible outcomes. कितने outcomes हो सकते हैं? There may be 6 possible outcomes. Hence, there are 6 exclusive events, exhaustive events. तो कितने events हो सकते हैं? 6. So whenever we are throwing a dice, then the number of possible outcomes will be the 6. It may be 1, it may be 2, it may be 3, it may be 4, it may be 5, or it may be 6. So there may be the 6 possible outcomes, and this type of events they may be called as the exhaustive events. and after these 6 we are going to see that they are going to repeat. Dice में भी जितने भी character होंगे या numbers होंगे, they are going to repeat. So whenever we throw a dice once, एक बार जब हम throw करते हैं तो we can expect any of the 6 faces. कोई भी एक 6 की कोई भी एक face हम उसमें से expect करते हैं. But there are 6 outcomes. 6 में से कोई भी एक outcome हमें देखने को मिलता है. Next is the mutually exhaustive and exclusive events. So we have seen exhaustive events. Now coming up to the mutually MUTUALLY, mutually exhaustive events, or we can also say exclusive events. So what is mutually exhaustive events? If in an experiment the occurrence of one event prevent the happening of all other event, मतलब अगर एक event का occurrence other event को अगर impact करता है, then in the same experiment, then these events are said to be the mutually exhaustive events. On the other hand, two events A and B are called mutually exclusive if they never occur simultaneously. मतलब ये दोनों event at the same time occur नहीं करता है. So these events are said to be mutually exhaustive events. So always remember that कि in this mutually exhaustive events, the happening of or occurrence of one event prevent the happening of all other events. Always remember that the happening or occurrence of एक event occur अगर करता है तो वो क्या करता है, prevent करता है happening of all other events. बाकी के event पे वो impact करता है. Example for tossing a coin. So the event head and tail are mutually exclusive, because if the outcome is head, then the possibility of getting a tail is same. Trial is ruled out. ठीक है ना? So if we toss a coin, if we are going to toss a coin, if we'll get the head, means you will not get the tail. So here you can say that the occurrence of head prevents the happening of the tail. So one event, it prevents the happening of the other event. So thus that type of event is said to be the mutually exhaustive event. Next is equally likely events. Equally likely events, these are events which are said to be equally likely if there is no reason to expect any one in the performance to the other. Example for, in a single cast of fair die, each of the event 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 is equally like. Means if we are playing with the dice, then we can say that any 6 or from 1 to 6, any one has got the equal chance of appearance. इनमें से कोई भी appear हो सकता है. So that type of event is said to be equally like event. So event are said to be equal like if there is no reason to expect any one in preference to the other. कोई भी एक प्रेफरेंस टू दी अनदर इसमें हमें नहीं दिखाते. ईच ऑफ देम, इसमें से 6 out of 6, each one of them has got the equal chance of appearance. Next is the favorable cases. So in cases which ensures the occurrence of events are said to be the favorable to the event. So in case of which ensures the occurrence of events are said to be the favorable to the events. Occur होने के बाद हमें favorable events you can see it. So whatever we have studied in this session, we are going to revise the portion, that is what do you mean by probability. So you know that what is probability? Probability is a branch of maths that studies the pattern of chances. And the idea of probability is based on observation. Probability describes what happened over many trials. So it is just a study of occurrence, कितना टाइम occur करता है, and it is only a type of predictability, हम predict कर सकते हैं. Application of probability, so it is used in the analysis, we can say that, even in the genetics, informations, etc., we can use it. So probability line, it is unlikely, you can say that it is a range from 0 to 1. So it always ranges from 0 to 1. So someone, you can measure a probability with a number like 10% of chances of rain. हम बोल सकते हैं कि आज 10% 110% चांस ऑफ रेन के चांसेस हैं. और यू कैन यूज वर्ड सच एज इम्पॉसिबल, आज चांस मतलब आज रेन ही नहीं होगा, इट इज़ लाइकली टू पॉसिबल, हो सकता है रेन हो, इवन चांस, likely or certainly, etc etc. So the probability की जो range होती है, it always varies from 0 to 1. So when we say that it won't rain, means where we are 100% sure about the rain by seeing the environment. So if 0 represents impossible and unlikely means it is between 0 to 1. Even chances may be represents in, it can be seen in the tossing a coin, and likely may be present in the, if 4 balls of blue color and 1 ball of red color, if it is kept in the same box, there we can find out the outcomes of the blue box will be more likely. That's why they are said written as likely. So here maybe, so you can say that possibilities of the line can be ranges from 0 to 1. So possibilities is always between 0 to 1. And father of the probability was Girolamo. So there are several type of practice problem which we have to do it in this probability. I know that probability concept is a little bit confusing topic, but we are going to solve it one by one, the problems of the probability, so that it will make you understand it more easily. So today we have already seen mutually inclusive events. So these are the two examples of the mutually inclusive events as well as the exclusive events. These are exclusive events and these are the examples of the inclusive events. So favorable events, these events which are considered for study. Getting ahead in case of tossing a coin, getting 6 in case of rolling a die. And sample space is the space where all possible outcomes are considered. So instead of tossing a coin, we can, what will be the possible outcomes? Head and the tail. So both head and tail are said the sample space. मतलब कहाँ से कहाँ तक range करता है, that is said to be the sample space. So in case of rolling a die, 1 to 6 will be the sample space. So with this, we are going to stop the topic, but tomorrow we are going to continue it by means of solving a problem. Thank you for watching.